Welcome to the Confident, Energized, and Sexy Mama Show. I am Dorit Palvanov, your host, wife, mom to 3 daughters, and a femininity coach. My mission with this podcast is to inspire and educate you about your power as a woman, wife, and mother in the 21st century through thought-provoking solo episodes and interviews. I believe that the health of the world begins at home. And as women, we have massive power in this domain. I'm also the creator and facilitator of the groundbreaking community-based membership called Circle, which is a collective of females, women, daughters, wives, and mothers who are ready to ditch the baton of guilt, shame, and sacrifice and instead embody confidence, energy, and passion. You deserve to feel good. You actually can have it all. This is God's plan for you. So mama, straighten your shoulders, sway those hips, and get to own your feminine power like never before. Let's do this. Hello, gorgeous. Welcome to another episode of the Confident, Energized, and Sexy Mama podcast. This is Dorit Palvanov, your host. I'm so excited to be back. Oh my gosh, this break that I've taken, it was so necessary for me. I think, as women, wives, and mothers who are constantly immersed in the home life and in creating your, the most exceptional marriage that you can have. And then, you have this desire to show up as the best mom that you can be. And you also want to express yourself creatively in the world through the work that you do in the world. So there are a lot of things that we are juggling all at once. And for me, I feel like there was just too much. And whenever we feel too much, that overwhelm that results from that, for me, it feels like, you know what? I'm going to use the example of my birth. Because birth is also, the most literal creative expression there is, right? For us women. And so for me, my first birth was a very, what's the word? It was a birth that had a lot of interventions because I knew nothing about my body. I didn't know anything about myself. And I've completely outsourced my health and my birth experience to the doctors and the nurses and the hospital and this whole thing. And so my body, now retrospectively, as I think about it, what I'm noticing is that my body just shut down, just completely shut down. And my body, even though I was ready to birth, my body wasn't. So there was some kind of stress response that my body just didn't feel safe to let go and deliver. And so eventually it was a whole mess. I was hooked to the epidural and I couldn't move. And then they had to perform an episiotomy. And that's how my first daughter was brought into the world. It's a long story, but, in essence, what happened was that I didn't feel that I connected with my baby, which was huge at the time. And that was the reason why for my second birth, I decided it's going to be a completely different birth. And, I went from one extreme to the other. So I went to midwives. I wanted to have to deliver my baby with midwives, and I did it 100% at home. So I had a home birth, and it was beautiful, but the entire experience was the most painful thing I've ever experienced in my life. So it was, obviously no drugs, no epidural. I did it all by myself. I was so silly that I did not hire a doula. I did not hire a birth coach. And
it was awful. It was awful, the pain. So again, my body shut down, didn't want to birth, even though I was already, it's been 6, 7, 8 hours into it. And every time the midwife checked me, I was maybe 3 or 4 centimeters dilated. So my body just did not want to go to birth. And eventually, again, intervention, the midwife had to break my water, and that's how my second daughter was born into the world. With my third daughter, I was much smarter. I learned the hard way. So with my third, I decided I'm going to hire a midwife as well. I love that experience. But I'm also going to hire a doula. So I hired a birth coach, which was the best thing I've done. It was honestly the best money I've spent. And my husband also, now that, we are past it, he was hesitant in the beginning because he's like, okay, but you've done it twice. You're going to be okay. And I'm like, no. I need the help. Which was funny because on the day of my birth, my husband got really, really sick. So as I was birthing and walking around the hall, my husband had a super high fever and he was just sleeping the whole time. Now imagine I listened to him and imagine I said, no, okay, I'm not going to hire somebody. I would have done this whole thing again by myself. Anyways, so I ended up hiring a doula. I decided for the third time to deliver my baby at the hospital because at the time I already had 2 kids at home and I didn't want to deliver at home with them at home. So my mom came and stayed home with the girls. And my husband and I left with our midwife and our doula. So you know what? My third birth was actually my longest. It took 13 hours from beginning, since the time we got to the hospital until my Naomi was born. But you know what? That was my best birth. I have the best memories of this birth because I was supported. I was breathing. I was totally in my body. I had Naomi after 4 years of practicing yoga, so I was very embodied. I knew much more about myself and my body. I knew about how to release my nervous system from that fight and flight that I was in. I was very open. Interestingly enough, my body still wouldn't release on its own. Maybe I'll never, maybe that's just how I see it. But this birth also, the midwife had to intervene and break my water. So with all 3 of my daughters, they had to break my water. And what's interesting, when I asked my mom, she said the same thing. And with all 3 of us, they had to break her water. So it's interesting, right? You guys heard my speech, and you know that the topic of intergenerational patterning and trauma, it's something that I am kind of like trying to understand and learn more about. And so it's interesting that I had a very similar experience to my mom. So my third baby was born into the world with me being, much calmer, much more open, and it was wonderful. And we bonded right away, and it was the best thing ever. The first time I saw her, I completely fell in love. I mean, I still remember it like yesterday. So when it comes to, our businesses and our creative outlets, and whether it is whether you have a blog or you write a book, or you are a coach and you also provide some kind of service to help people, this is also your creative outlet. And you and I know that running a business, it's almost like it's our for me, it's my 4th baby. Because so much energy, we pour so much energy into it. And of course we do it with love, we want to nurture it, and we want to feed it, and we want it to succeed and to grow. And yet sometimes there are times where we just have to step back and scale back and just reevaluate everything. And so, yeah, I had to do that too. And, I remember, I think maybe if this whole process, if Corona hit, let's say 2 years ago, I would be completely devastated. But this time I felt like I was ready for it. I felt like, all the work that I've done was it's almost like I was practicing for something, and I was practicing for this. And I've taken the opportunity of like really looking into what I want and what I want to create and how I want to live my life and what's the lifestyle that I want to live. And I had to be really, really honest in terms of like, how much time do I want to spend on social media, and how do I want to attract my clients, and how much time do I want to, pour into work that doesn't necessarily pay the bills. And so I just had to be really, really honest with myself. And, if you think about 2020, I mean, that's cliche, but 2020 is 2020 vision, right? But yes, it's so true. 2020 is the year of clarity. It's the year of truth. It's the year of authenticity for me too. And so my husband and I, we had many, 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 many conversations, and it brought me back to my core and to my essence and to the love of my life, which is expression. I mean, that is, if I have to really, if you ask me, what's your genius, Dorit? What are you really, really good at? And I am really, really good at feeling, and, at like, I'm very, very intuitive, and I my body is my vessel for really comprehending and embodying somebody, my own feelings, and then somebody else's feelings too. And then the other thing is I'm really, really good at expressing them and putting feelings into words. And so I've been working with, a bunch of clients and helping them to express themselves online. And that slowly evolved into, I don't know, I guess, a new service. And so what I've done is I started offering copywriting services, and to help people really infuse their personality into their personal brand. And it's been wonderful, and I love it. And, I still struggled with, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with this podcast? And what am I going to do with coaching? And what's interesting, it was one day when I was just, sleeping, and that moment when you're just about to wake up, but you're still kind of asleep. And in that moment, I got a download. God spoke to me, and he said, you know what, Dorit, this doesn't have to be a separate thing. Because at the end of the day, being a confident, energized, and sexy mama and sexy woman, and this embodied force of nature, it's about speaking your truth and finding your voice. And so isn't it lovely how everything kind of like comes clear together, like like pieces of puzzles that come together and create this beautiful picture. So anyways, that's where I feel like life is taking me. I feel like I'm being called to write more, to express more, to help people to express themselves, to help women find their voice. And so the membership community is going beautifully. Women are actually craving and desiring to find their voice and to learn how to speak their truth, and women are looking for tools. And so that is what is slowly evolving for me. This podcast is going to be still an outlet for me to share stories of women who saved themselves, and through working on themselves, they are now offering a service for the world. I mean, that's what I've been doing this whole time, right? But maybe now, we have a little bit of a different kind of, title to it, or we can call it something else. So yeah, this is what it is. Today, I'm so excited to share with you one of my favorite interviews of 2020. And that's an interview with my business coach, Sarah Walton. Sarah Walton is a business mentor, and she's been featured on the Today Show. She speaks at women's conferences all over the world and has helped hundreds of women start and grow businesses that they love. She is the voice behind the Game On Girlfriend podcast, which I'm so honored also to be a guest on. And she's known for her weekly Coffee with Coach streaming video conversations on Monday mornings, her signature online courses, the Game On Girlfriend Project, and the Heart-Centered Business Bootcamp. She also runs her exclusive Manifest Mastermind, which is a 9-month personal development experience for women who are ready to live a platinum level life. Yes to that. Sarah has become the go-to source of inspiration, no-nonsense teaching, and practical integration for women in business. And I can vouch for Sarah because I've worked with her for a period of 6 months, about a year ago. And she, just having her in my life has helped me tremendously with my own truth and with my own voice. And you will hear in the interview how her story, her grocery story. It just, I felt so connected. I felt so aligned with her because both of our moms, they have a very similar experience. And when I heard her share that story, I just knew that this is a woman I want to work with. So, and that's, again, if you are a business owner and you are operating a business online, then you know that your story has so much power, as far as connecting with the right people, right? It's almost like it's a tool for you to screen the right people who actually are going to flock after you and go after you and support you in everything that you do, which is what I've been doing with Sarah since I started working with her. So you will hear in the interview today her grocery store story. You will listen to her mindset and her approach about how to get over blaming your parents for your circumstances or for their circumstances, why people get so scared of money and making money. Especially, we talked about it in relation to women. Why are women so scared of money? We talked about what happens when we believe that we don't have control over our time. And, right, time is money. And so as women, we don't have control over our time, what are the consequences of that? We talked about that too. We talked about her opinion around why money isn't as accessible for women as it is for men. We touched upon the limiting beliefs that women are conditioned to accept so that they can stay small, to be cute, or to continue to believe that they're crazy. That is patriarchy in effect. So you will hear her talk about that. And if you think that you don't have that, I need you to pay closer attention. Okay? Because I'm having hundreds of conversation with women who hear these sentences and hear these, the way we describe these issues that are big. I understand they're big and they're overwhelming, but please don't be fooled. You are also affected by it. And so I highly encourage you to be again, honest with yourself and authentic with yourself, and find where in your life are you playing small? Where in your life do you feel like you have to be cute or to continue to believe that you're crazy? Because we all, unfortunately, we were all conditioned and we were all raised to believe that this is who we are, which separates us from our true self. She shares the number one skill that women have to develop to be successful in business. What would be possible on the planet if every woman unleashed her full potential instead of focusing on her weight and her looks? Oh, that's a big one. So what would the world look like, right, if every woman just unleashed her godly potential? It's a big one. We talked about what makes women so good in business. And also, we talked about misogyny. We talked about toxic masculinity. We talked about patriarchy. This conversation was really multifaceted, and we touched upon really how, as women, we can get back control over our time, over our money, and not only for us, but also obviously for the world. So Sarah is wonderful. I'm sure you would fall in love with her after listening to this. Before I turn on the interview, I just want to let you know that all the show notes to all the things that we've covered today on the show are going to be attached in the show notes below this episode. So please head on over there and, find all the links there. We talked about some books. We talked about her Take Back Control worksheets. We talked about her podcast. We talked about her Facebook page and her Instagram. So all of that is attached for you in the show notes below. So please head on over there, find Sarah, connect with her, and tell her that I sent you. All right, my love. Without further ado, here is my interview with the lovely Sarah Walton. Hi, Sarah. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Dorit. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
This is such a moment for me.
Say more things.
I'll say more things because you are this woman in my life. And you and I had these conversations so many times. Like I said in the intro, you are my business coach, you're my mentor. But more than anything, coming from a family of women, I thought that I was empowered, but I wasn't. Or at least it didn't feel like I was. And I craved a role of mother, and I craved a role of big sister, and I craved that role of somebody who will take my hand and just pull me to the other side, where it's shown how to have it all without killing yourself in a process.
Yes, so I understand. Yeah.
Right? So I feel like in my own healing journey and finding my way, I found, mothers, but you are this big sister for me.
Oh, that means so much to me. You have no idea.
I know. I have an idea. And I think this is a great way to kind of segue into your story, because your grocery story, it touched me on so many levels. That's the reason I decided to work with you. That's the reason I continue to invest with you. And ironically speaking, I've heard your grocery story while I was in the grocery store.
I love that. I love that so much. It's so great.
So why don't we start there? Tell us your grocery store story. Why, what happened? Tell us about your relationship with with women, and how did you end up doing this work in the world?
Oh my gosh, that's such a loaded question. So I can tell that story in 15 minutes, or I can try to tell it in 3 minutes. There's a couple different ways I can tell it, but I'm so moved that, one, that you remembered it, and two, that it touched you so deeply, because I will still cry sometimes when I share it. And I've shared it on stages with 30,000 people, and I've shared it in small rooms with 5 people. But it really was the moment that I understood I was on my own, and that my happiness was 100% my own responsibility. And the story starts when I was 5, actually. I just loved to dance. I was watching the Nutcracker during a Christmas special on one of the public channels, and I pointed at the screen and turned to my mom and said, I want to do that. And I just loved to dance. There was this feeling it gave me all the time. I would dance in my slips. I would dance any chance I had. And as I grew up, there was this one dance team I really wanted to make in high school. and the tryouts came, and I don't remember ever working that hard physically. I remember having bruises on my knees and on my legs hurt, and I was so sore, but I could not wait to try out. And as I did it, I tried out, I won a spot on the team. And I was in this really close-knit neighborhood where a lot of the neighbors came over and brought me roses, and it was this really, really big deal. And I was so elated. It was like this lifetime goal at this point. I was only 16 at the time, but starting at age 5, I mean, I had achieved something I really, really wanted, and I'd worked hard for it. And as we were celebrating, see, this is the part where I cry sometimes, but as we were celebrating, the letter came, congratulations, this is so great. This is how much your dance costumes are going to cost. And it was one of those moments where, I don't know if you've ever had this experience where you feel like your soul drops out of your body and you sort of lift up almost and watch it happen.
Right. Because
I was just like, oh, it was like someone had hit me in the stomach, because there's no way we could afford these costumes. Because I grew up really poor, not just a little bit poor, but like really, really poor, where there were times the only things we had in the cupboard were honey and loaf of bread that my mom had made herself. And so I'm looking at these costumes and I'm like, this dream is just slipping out of my hands. But even at that age, I was pretty frisky. I know that's surprising to you, Dorit, I'm sure, but I was pretty frisky. And I got a job at a local mall, and I was really excited. I was selling stupid stuff nobody needed in the 80s in America. It was a good time. I think I made $3.57, an hour, something like that. And I got my first paycheck, and I was really excited because it was enough for the down payment on the dance costumes. So at the time I didn't have a bank account. So I took this check to the grocery store with my mom and my younger brother. And as we're walking into the store to cash my check, my mom turned to me and said, "Sarah, the strawberries are on sale. Can we get some?" Now, I know if you're a psychologist, your head just exploded. We can talk about that a different time. But anyway, she turned to me and said, "Can we get these?" And told me how much they were. And I thought about the costume deposit. And I was like, let's get some strawberries. That's fine. So she took my younger brother back out into the grocery store to get the strawberries. And I waited in line on what was called a service desk at that time, where you could go cash checks. You could do other things inside the grocery store. It was kind of cool. We don't have that anymore, but we could do it at the time. So I waited in line. I finally got the cash. I was super excited, looking around for my mom and my younger brother, and I couldn't find them because I was looking in the express lanes. So I start walking up and down the regular lanes, and I finally saw them. And my mom was standing there next to a cart full of groceries. And they were groceries I knew she couldn't afford to buy. And as I looked at the cart, it was my brother's favorite breakfast cereal. It was milk. It was lunch meat for his lunches. It was bread and the strawberries. And I'm standing there, and I know in this moment, I can pay for those groceries or I can buy my costume, but I can't do both. And it was just this moment of, what do I do? Do I take care of my family, or do I take care of my own lifelong dream? And that moment was echoed throughout my entire life until there I was in corporate America running this huge team. We had a budget of $50,000 a week for Facebook ads. We were doing really, really well. I had the huge corner glass office. I had a great staff, and I was miserable, but I was the breadwinner. And I sat in my chair in my office, and I realized my entire life, I had decided I could either take care of my family or I could take care of myself, but I couldn't do both. And that day in the grocery store, I bought the groceries.
Of course.
Right, because we put our families first. And I realized as I was sitting in my office, as my stomach hurt, I was probably 20 pounds lighter than I am right now, not on purpose, but because I couldn't eat because I was stressed all the time, and realizing someone else was raising my children. And that's not why I had kids. So I'd realized that moment in the grocery store, I had decided for my entire life, I could not take care of my family and take care of myself. And I was living that out. I was proving it by making myself sick in a job I hated. And that's what had me quit. I mean, I literally quit that day. I walked out. I told my boss how he could restructure the team. He said, "You're insane. You can't do this." I said, "No, really, I can by law. I'll see you later." And we're all really good friends still, which is great. But it was that moment where I realized that a 16-year-old was no longer allowed to run my life. And that's really what I work on with my clients as well. There's moments throughout our lives where we make decisions that we take on as law. And sometimes it takes a little bit of work for us to realize we're the ones who made those decisions. I could have just bought the groceries without deciding that that meant something about who I was or how I had to go through life, but that's not what we do. We attach massive meaning to our life experiences, and then we play them out, and we make sure that the stories we tell ourselves are true, even when in reality they may not be, but we will act it out over and over and over to be right about what we decided when we were younger.
As you were sharing this story, every time you share it, I have this emotional moment.
Me too. Yeah.
Such a powerful story. And as you were sharing this moment of realizing that you can do this or this, but you can't do both. I had this moment also, but instead of feeling empowered to change that around, because I was conditioned that I don't have the power, I kind of like I gave the power to my husband, because I was conditioned that, that men are supposed to take care of their families, financially I speak.
Right.
And it's funny, you decided, how old were you when you decided not to allow the 16-year-old to run your life?
Oh, heavens. Let's see. How old am I now? That was 12 years ago. So I was 35.
Oh, so okay. So I'm good.
You're good. You're good. Some people figure it out faster than others, but yeah, you're good.
Yes, I'm 36. So I'm around. Okay. So that's when you realize, that's when you have that pivot moment when you're like, okay, enough with the girl. It's time to be a woman. I love that. And you talk about this too, like be the woman in the room full of girls. I love that so, so much. But what I want to ask you is, how did you not end up, or did you, maybe you did go through this period of like blaming your mom and blaming, where you came from. How did you not end up entwined and entangled with this story of which is really a prison? How did you set yourself free?
Oh my God. You know what, Dorit? I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before. And I actually think that's where a lot of the gold is in this story. I will back up and say that, as somebody who speaks in public and does courses and shares this story, I was very careful to not share the story until I was complete with it. Meaning I wasn't carrying around anger for my mom. And I wasn't still pissed at circumstances, for lack of a better word, because I think that's really important as speakers and leaders and teachers, that if you are sharing a heartfelt story like that, like something you've really gone through and you have not healed it, you will end up triggering other people. And that can get really awful and it's really irresponsible. So I just want to start with that. It took a lot of work. It's not like it was magic. And it was conscious work that I did to make sure I was living my life the way I wanted to live it, not out of reaction. So that I would actually create my days, literally starting with days, so they were mine. And there was a moment, and this it's a little bit of a tangent, but not really, and that there was something else huge I had to heal from my childhood, in that my mother's youngest brother was actually sexually abusing me from the time I was like 18 months old, which is crazy.
Oh my
so
gosh,
I had to do the work to heal that too, right? And now I can share that story as well. And so in both of these instances, the reason I share both is because the way I healed both ended up being the same. And that's that you got to feel the feelings, right? We can't pretend they didn't happen. But there comes a moment when you actually decide that the circumstances or the other hurt people, that whole phrase, hurt people,
Mm-hmm.
that they don't get any more minutes. And not in a pissed off way, but in a hang on a second. This life that I've been given is such a blessing and such a privilege. No more minutes on this. I want the minutes to be on the people that I can help, on the service I want to provide, on the life I want to live. And some people might say that sounds cheesy. And listen, it comes after lots and lots of therapy. It comes after PTSD therapy. I mean, I've done really extensive work, and I think it's also led me to really love psychology and understand how our emotions affect our behavior. And I think I've really helped other women in business do that. Because as we'll talk about later, I'm sure, when you start to dive into business, what will come up are all of your insecurities and all the things you haven't healed. And so taking on the work of loving my mom the way she is, right? And loving her the way she's not. Both of those come in.
Yeah.
And then also really releasing the idea that, like, look, my uncle was sick and those things happen and they're 100% real. They don't have to affect me now. And I don't want to upset anybody who's still dealing with it. Like, we all come to that moment at our own time, and that's totally appropriate. But there will come a time where you just want to drop it like a hot rock. You're like, I don't want this anymore. I'm done now. And it's incredibly freeing, and you have to do the work to get there. You can't just say that and then it's magically done. But that's really what I did, was just let it go, which sounds simplistic, but at the end of the day, the answer really is simple. There comes a moment when you decide you either want to live life on your terms or you want to live your life into reaction to other people's pain.
Oh shit. It's so true. It's so true. It's so true. I think I'm now starting to understand that, and really taking ownership of my own part in the story.
Yeah.
Because for so many years, I feel like I was putting on this big, huge production, putting on this huge show, making sure that all the moving pieces are working, but not ever putting myself in a position where the spotlight is on me, because this is my show. It is my show.
Right.
It
Yeah.
really is. It's my life. It's my family. It's my marriage. It's my business. It's all me. So where did I lose me?
Yep.
Right. So, and I think, and it sounds like we all women, especially women entrepreneurs who, and I did not grow, and it sounds like it's the same for you. I didn't grow up in an entrepreneurial family where it was something like you just inherit, right? It's something that you had to become. It's something that it's like a self-made process. And it sounds like that is the reason why, today I wanted to talk to you about why business growth is personal growth and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about you starting to make money that brings all of this. It's almost like it opens this can of worms.
It does.
So I want you to talk about that. And I also want you to try to connect it with something you said earlier, which is part of the reclamation, part of the process that you were going through was to make the days mine. You said, I wanted the days to be mine, or I designed the days to so that they are mine. So I want you to talk more about that. What is it about making the days your own, or reclaiming your own time, or your own sense of worth that is so tied with making money? And why is it so triggering for especially women?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of reasons for that, I think. But we're still living in a patriarchal world, right? And I remember when you were a guest on my podcast, we talked about that too, right? Like, this is still a world that was designed by men for men. And money and exchanging money for goods and services is part of that, right? It was designed in that sort of transactional, cold, hard way. And I think when we as women try to participate with money that way, it doesn't work, because it doesn't work for us. We don't see money that way. We don't see our own contributions to society that way either. And so when we try to jam ourselves into this patriarchal transactional world, it doesn't work. So I think that's part of it for women in general. And that's even for anybody listening who feels like they were raised in a family where they were supported around money, or they were always told they could do or be whatever they wanted. That's awesome, because that's a stronger foundation. But once you get out into the world, you run into this cold transactional way of doing business.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's part of it. The other part of it is I have really come to believe that money has a really important property, for lack of a better word. And I don't know if your listeners have read A Course in Miracles, if they're familiar with A Course in Miracles or have ever read it, but the theory is one that The Secret was built on, that movie, The Secret, which I'm not a very big fan of. But the main philosophy is this, is that there are really only two things. There's love and there's fear. When it comes to our emotions and our experiences, those are really the two basic fundamental emotions that we experience. And then everything that is negative, right? The anxiety, the loneliness, the sadness, the apprehension, all of that comes from the base of fear, and joy, abundance, excitement, love. All of that is the basis of love. And love's job is to bring up fear on purpose so that it can be healed. And the more I study money and the way that it moves through society and moves through hands, it has that same property that love does, in that it will bring up what you have not healed.
Mm.
And that's its job. And that's why people get so scared of it. I believe that's why we have the lies out there that rich people are selfish, or that money is the root of all evil. It's because the people who came up with those ideas bumped up against all of their fears once they started making money, and they ran from it. And then told everybody else it was evil, or it was bad, or it's too scary, because they had not healed what they needed to heal in order to be able to earn the money they deserved. And I think as women, we're already up against this patriarchal society, and then we're up against everything that we haven't healed. And I think that combo's tough. And then in addition to that, as the women in this patriarchal society, we're expected to do everything. Right? We're expected to take perfect care of the kids, to be beautiful all the time, to be super thin, to make great meals, to run a successful business. Oh, and P.S., can you have sex when I want it, sweet wife, right? Or whatever, right? And it's like, when the hell are you supposed to have time to heal all of your fears on top of all that? So when I look at teaching women how to make money and reclaiming our days, it's about being brave enough to deal with what comes up when you think about starting to make real money. And by real money, I'm talking high six and seven figures. I'm not talking about I made $5,000 the last year. I'm talking about serious money. Like, what scares you about that? And then dig into that. Don't run away from it. And if anybody's really interested in doing this work, Jay Shetty's most recent book, Think Like a Monk, has a beautiful section on fear and how it really is this exquisite alarm system we have. And when we ignore it, it ends up causing more pain. And so if you haven't made money, or you're trying to make money and it's not working, there's some sort of alarm system inside your fears that you are not paying attention to. And that pain is going to continue to grow until you face the fear. So did I answer your question, Dorit?
You did. I think what I asked specifically is, what can we expect to change when we reclaim our time, our days, and our worth, really? Because like you're saying, if we are expected to be everything for everybody else, it means that we are expected to sacrifice our time for the things that are more important than us. So how is business, or the business that we are choosing to do, or the business that we are that we love so much? Because for me, for example, and you know this about me, my business is an extension of me.
Yes.
So what happens there when we don't have this control, or at least, we believe we don't have the control over our time.
Yeah, that's part of the fear, right? So the fear would be that if you actually say, I need this time for me, something bad will happen, or you're bad. Those are the kinds of fears that will come up around this, right? Because in order to make the money you want to make, you're going to have to figure out how to have more time. And asking for that time, or creating a relationship or a circumstance in which that time is provided for you, right? So other people aren't pulling on you during that time, that takes courage. So the only reason it takes courage is because there's a fear, right? If there was no fear, it would just be what you do. But instead it takes courage because there's a fear built in there. So if you were to reclaim this on a day-to-day basis, it looks like having conversations that scare you. It looks like doing work that scares you. It looks like doing the unsexy tasks that nobody sees but you, like organizing your time or pre-cooking meals so you don't have to worry about that, or whatever it is that's sucking your time out of where you want it to be. You need to look at why you're afraid to ask for that time back. And that right there is you already starting to reclaim things by not allowing the fear to run you and making it look like, oh, I just don't have time. Does that make sense?
So good. It's so good. And I remember you and I work we work a lot on that. And I can tell you, and it takes me time to kind of like digest things. I think I'm naturally not a fast. It's funny because I am fast when it's time to take action.
Yeah.
But in terms of like really embodying something, it takes me time. But only now can I can tell you that only now I feel like I'm really reclaiming my time. So I've had this difficult conversation with my husband, and we did hire somebody to bring the kids back home from school.
That's awesome.
We did discuss about having somebody help us with the meals. Living my life in alignment with my cycle, that really is what had given me the permission. Because if rest is embedded in as a part of who I am and how I move through life, then I need to rest. So how do I set my life in a way that allows me to rest? So that means I have to have those conversations. I have to, enlist my husband and enroll him to support me more at home, and also my kids and everybody who is around me. It means it's okay to hire help. It's okay to get support. And it took me a long time because I was raised to believe that I have to carry it all by myself. Because my mom did this, my grandmother did it, like they all did it. But what I couldn't live with is that the fact that how miserable and sick, like physically sick, all of these women were and are.
Yes. Yeah,
right?
absolutely. So, yep.
It's not to say that there is no cost to that. There is. Right. And there is a big price that as women, we are paying for that.
Yeah. And it's all the things we haven't healed, right? I mean, we're not speaking up and asking for what we need.
And money is such a big part of that. So for me, money is not so much, I personally, Sarah, I'm not motivated by money just for the sake of money. For me, money is more than that. For me, it really is a reclamation. It means that I'm fully living my highest potential. So I want to talk to you about that. Why is it that women are so triggered by money? And also, why aren't more women making the kind of money that they want?
Well, I'm going to say something that is maybe a little bit controversial, but I actually believe that's by design, at least in the States, right? Women didn't get the vote for a very long time. Even today, what we're going through, right? Women's rights are very highly at risk. And I believe that's by design. And because money is the most powerful tool we have access to today, and I know a lot of people don't like it when I say that, and I'm so sorry if it triggers you. You might want to look at what that fear is. But
I'm sorry, not sorry. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm not necessarily up for arguing that point, right? I don't particularly love that fact either, but it's pretty hard to argue against the fact that that's true. And we can look at who's in power. We can look at what makes things happen, and it's money. And we've just decided that for right now. Like, who knows what will happen to societies in the future, but for right now, we've decided that money speaks. And women not having it is by design, because then we don't have a seat at the table. where really big decisions are being made. And I talk about this a lot in the States because I think our military is, sure, it's great and everything, but it's amazing to me that we can drop bombs within inches of where we want to kill people. But for some reason, we can't get food to people who are starving. Like, I cannot wrap my head around that. And that's the kind of money I'm talking about. Women are not making those decisions. We just know that because we would not decide to kill other people's children over making sure people had food. That's not what we would do. And so us as women not participating in money at the highest levels and in financial decisions at the highest levels is by design. And I think sometimes when I say that, women get really excited. They're like, wait a second. Oh, hell no. And they'll start taking action to make more money. And it's a lot like what you said, Dorit. It's not for the sake of making money. It's for the sake of changing these conversations. It's for the sake of having women start to influence these really critical decisions that are affecting the entire planet. So I think that is one of the reasons that women have a harder time making money when it's by design too. Here in the States, we're still not getting paid the same amount. I'm not sure what the numbers are in Canada, but I know that as this continues, I think it'll get better. And I think women will start to earn more money. But for right now, it's almost seen as garish or like you sold your soul, or you have to become a Kardashian, or, you know, one of those influencers on Instagram who takes pictures of your boobs and your butt all day. Like, I don't know what that looks like for some people, but I think when it comes to women making money, that's what a lot of people assume, right? Who'd she sleep with to get that job, right? Those sorts of things get to be thrown around. And again, it comes back to our day-to-day conversations. It comes back to us being able to examine what we're afraid of. And for a lot of women, the fear around making a lot of money is, what will other people think of me? And I think that's something we need to address.
I love that, because I think what you're saying is that, yes, there is a problem, but it is our responsibility as women to make more money so that we can fight back, because that is the currency.
Correct.
Right?
That's right.
That is the currency. I mean, there's just no way around that. And I love when you say, just one of your recent podcasts, you talked about this concept of, where are the grown-ups?
Yes.
Where are the grown-ups? Because, and I see this all the time in my practice too, women are so, and I hate to include myself in that, but I do include myself, but there is this tendency of like, oh my gosh, but it's so hard and I can't, right? Like, and like there is some sort of like escapism in that.
And absolutely.
Some sort of like soothing in that too, which is sick when I think about that.
It is. No, I mean, we've been taught to be little, right? We've been belittled. And so we act little.
Good and cute. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So
and it's like those dolls that used to be, math is hard, right? I mean, that's what that sounds like, but it's hard. And those dolls made a lot of money. Like, it's ridiculous, but that's what we've been taught. And I think it's up to us, like you said, to really see this paradigm for what it is.
Yes.
And not even get pissed about it anymore. Just be like, oh, I see. Okay. So if I want C, it's A plus B. Got it. Thanks. And just start to interact with it based on truth and fact. And then we can bring our heart and our service and our beauty into it as well.
Sarah, you just talked about these girls, and you reminded me something. When my girls went to summer camp, and thank goodness we had summer camp during coronavirus.
Right.
But there was one girl there, I think she was 13 years old. She was wearing this red tank top that said, cute but psycho.
Oh,
and
that hurts my heart.
I was hurt. It hurt me, but I was also so angry. Angry that this is what we are teaching these girls. We are teaching them that, yes, you are actually crazy. You are. It's, as a woman, you are crazy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and this is what I'm talking about when I say we're still in it. It hasn't stopped yet.
It's so wrong. And I think part of living your life and understanding your cycle, understanding your flow of hormones and energy, this is the way to get out of it. This is the way to shift your mind around and really shift the legacy that we are living to our girls, to our daughters, which I know you have a daughter and I have 3. I cannot live with myself knowing that I was here and I know what I know what I know, and I've worked with women like yourself and with other powerful women, and I didn't change that. Like, I cannot live with myself. So for me, this is the responsibility for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I would say use that, Dory, because as women, right, we do tend to put the needs of others ahead of our own. And so we can actually use that as fuel inside this conversation as we shift the paradigm. Is it's not always about you, right? It's about the legacy. It's about the overall conversation, and it's about what we're leaving behind. And you kind of have to decide as a woman these days which side you're going to be on. It's pretty clear.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk to us about what happens to a woman when we start running and operating and owning a business. What happens to us?
So many fun things. I would say
they're not
in the
so
beginning,
fun. Let's be honest. They're not so fun.
Really effing hard. No. Yes, so many things. It's actually hard to know where to start with that. Even though I knew we were going to talk about this, it's so loaded. And I think for each woman, it is very different. And I can almost tell just in an immediate conversation with a woman about her business or even about launching a business where her head is. Meaning I can pretty much tell you what she's making based on the type of conversation we have, what her concerns are, where her head is. And so those who were really just starting out, it's really about what other people think. Do you like my logo? What about my colors? Is this pretty enough? I need to get the best photo shoot. And that's when I know someone's just starting out and they're not making any money. Now, as somebody goes through this journey, what happens is that falls away because the mission and the idea and the purpose start to take over. And one of my favorite questions to people who are asking if they can work with me, and I'll talk to them about where they are in their business and what's going on. And those who are just starting out, well, I got to get my website. I got to do my logo. And I'll just stop them and say, do you know what my logo looks like? And 99% of the time they have no idea. I go, right, because you don't care. You just want to know if I can help you or not, right? And they're like, yeah. I go, yes, stop worrying about that stuff. And that first rung of entrepreneurship is where that 13-year-old girl is, right? Like, what do I look like? What do other people think? Do I look crazy? But I'm really cute, but I got to make it look good. And it's shedding that initial cover. That is the first step to owning and running and operating a successful business. So the very first thing that happens to a woman who wants to start a business really is you got to let go of that, and you can't worry about looking good anymore. And that is, I think, the biggest hurdle to creating a successful business. And that means you can't worry about what people you hire think of you. You can't worry about what customers think of you, other than you make sure you have excellent customer service, right? You never want a customer to feel like you don't care. It's not that, but that you don't let one negative review knock you off course for 5 days. You don't let one critique on social media ruin your month, right? It's about like, okay, got that, I got to keep going. Got that, I got to keep going. And that muscle, that skill of understanding that the more successful you become, the more critique will come your way, and that's just part of the game. And learning that, I think, is one of the bigger pieces for women. So it's really shedding the idea of having to look good, and then understanding that critique doesn't have to mean anything about you unless you know you haven't been really great at customer service or you didn't deliver on your promises.
Oh, so good. I love that. I love that that's the skill that women in business need to develop to be successful in business. It's so true, because I was just having this conversation with a woman, and she was asking me about, I was on an interview on her show, and she asked me, how on earth do I let go of the mom guilt? When, for example, she hired somebody so now she's in this process of reclaiming her time. She understands that, she's worth more than what she believed that she does. And she decided to hire somebody to clean her home. So this woman, she's saying, this woman is coming tomorrow and my house is a mess. And now I feel guilty because my house is a mess. So I want to clean my home before she comes.
Oh boy, that is so common.
Ridiculous. So woman, right? But I think, again, it is only woman because we are allowing it to be woman.
Correct.
Correct. This comparison game is so dumb. How did we shift from a society where, as women, we support one another to a society where we're so hostile against one another? It gets dumb. And I think that is the worst part of patriarchy. I actually think, Sarah, and I think you would resonate with me, I actually think that women are the ones who perpetuate patriarchy and not men. I really, truly, honestly do. It is women who decide to agree and live with this, low standard, and we keep perpetuating this. This is what we teach to our daughters. This is what we teach to our sons, and it's a rolling game that just doesn't evolve.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is some truth in that, but I would amend it to say I don't think women consciously perpetuate it.
Thank you for adding that.
Yeah. I mean, I think what happens is you get taught it, right? And then you just think that's the way things are.
That's who I am. Yes.
Yeah. And I think what we as women need to understand is when women are arguing against each other, when women are fighting, or when women are waking up every day, all day, worrying about their weight, or who's skinnier, or who looks like this, or her Instagram feed is better than mine, who benefits from that? Just stop and ask that question. Who benefits?
Not us.
From that loss of energy? And what would be possible on the planet? And this is a challenge for every woman listening right now. What do you think, honestly, would be possible on this planet if tomorrow morning every single woman woke up and accepted that she's absolutely perfect exactly the way she is? Can you imagine the amount of energy and love and brain power and straight up power would be unleashed on this planet if we were not totally consumed by our appearance, which we were taught to focus on? Just think about that for a second and ask yourself the next time you're like, oh, I'm so fat, or oh, I should have done this way, or my house is a mess, or my kids don't look. Just take a second and put that in perspective and wonder, who is this serving that this is how I talk to myself?
Yep. Definitely not me. Definitely not my family. Definitely not my children. Yes, it's so powerful. But you know what? Let's talk about that. Tell me, what makes women so good at business? What do women do or have that makes us, that propels the world to be a better place?
Well, there's so many things, but I'll go with the scientific. How about that? Let's just go fact-based for a second.
Okay.
So, we actually, this is, you can look this up. It's very cool. We actually have more connective tissue in our brain between our two hemispheres, which means we can go back and forth from the artist, feely, emotional side and the intellectual, totally straightforward thinking side. We can bounce back and forth between those so much faster than men can. And any woman who's ever lived with a man knows this is true. Like, ask him the next time he's watching TV if he could do the dishes. He'll be like, but I'm watching TV. Like, they can't do more than one thing. And that's not a dig. Like, we need that energy sometimes. And sometimes men are really great at focusing on only one thing because that's all they can do, right? Their brain just is wired that way. And for us, our ability to bounce back and forth between the compassionate and the logical, between the heart and the brain, the way that we can, makes us incredible at service-based businesses, but also at anything that contributes beauty or convenience or ease in any way, actually, to our clients and customers. We will always be better at that because this ability to bounce back and forth between the hemisphere allows us to have access to both the masculine energies and the feminine energies. We can cross over. Men can't. Now, that's a generalization. And of course, there will always be outliers. But for the most part in business, when you have a male boss and you come to him and say, my kid is really sick, they're like, and? Right? And they don't do that to be a jerk, but they can't bounce back and forth between those two worlds. Whereas if you have a female boss and you come in, listen, my kid's sick, she'll go, okay, totally get it. Go take care of that. And here's what I need from you by the end of the day. Is that going to work? So you can still get both sides done and still be caring. And I just think we have this natural ability to see what people need, right? All of this nurturing that we do all of our lives, and to fill the need. And if we understand that filling that need is actually worth a financial exchange, then we hit the jackpot. But it's that last step that women have a hard time making.
Yeah. And we talked about the why,
Yes.
why it happens,
Yes.
why it's so hard for us. Yeah. And what I wanted to say, I agree with everything you said. And I wanted you to add a few words about how can we operate in a men's world, knowing that, yes, the way it is right now, it is a men's world. How do we not get to a place where we eventually begin to resent men or begin to be really angry at men for what they had done to us, which we know all of this is not true. Because I know you're married. I know you're raising a son. I just really am curious about your perspective around that, just because you have such a strong proposition and such a strong standing when it comes to women empowerment.
Yeah. I love men. Like I really do. I love men so much. And I think part of that affinity I have for men is because before the grocery store story, my mom had remarried a man who had 3 sons. So I was actually raised in a household up until that moment. They got divorced about 2 years before that story. I was actually raised with 5 brothers in the home. And I watched them come home and like be devastated and heartbroken after, say, asking a girl out and she said no, or she was going out with somebody else. And I saw this really soft, tender side of men in these teenage boys that were my older brothers that I don't think a lot of women have access to. And this toxic masculinity, this BS patriarchy that we are living inside of hurts the men as much as it hurts us.
Yes.
And so I have this very tender, true affinity for what these men go through and how they are not allowed to have their emotions, which is one of the reasons they can't access the feminine the way we can access the masculine. And it's devastating to them. And I think that compassion is what allows me not to have the hate towards men. Listen, there are jerks out there for sure. We all know them. We know who they are. But overall, like on a day-to-day basis in our interactions with men, I don't have that feeling, but I do talk to them about it. I have a male trainer, and he was actually just this morning, someone was trailing him as we were working out. Huge guy, like, oh my gosh, the biggest muscles I've ever seen. I was like, holy cannoli, you're gigantic. Right. And he said, what do you do? So I started to talk to him about toxic masculinity. And this guy teared up in the middle of the gym floor with me. He's like, I've never had anybody talk to me like that. I didn't know that was a thing. He's like, when did this happen? And so I took him all the way back to 5,000 years ago when women were, running the world, and it was a circle, and now it's this line, and this is better than that. And he was like, oh my God, this is the coolest conversation I've ever had. So I think if we can tap into that and understand that the men are as thirsty for this conversation as we are, it really helps alleviate it. Listen, this system was just set up, and our job is to question it, not to be pissed off at the people who haven't questioned it yet, if that makes sense.
Totally. And what you just said, it really strengthens my belief system that men really do need women. And it's part of the reclamation. This is part of the reclamation. It's part of the responsibility that we have as women to rise and leave the apron in the kitchen.
Yes, please. And I love to cook, but yes, please.
Yes. And just, stop, being so stuck in this prison of the home. And I'm definitely guilty in that, in that, because I've allowed myself to be stuck for too long, way too long. So thank you for your leadership, and thank you for,
oh, you're so sweet.
Because since I started working with you, and since I started really diving deeper and kind of like drilling this whole concept of, living in alignment with my cycle, reclaiming my time, reclaiming my worth.
Right.
It's so true that I am seeing in real life how this affects my husband. It affects his emotional health. It affects his mental health. I mean, Sarah, he finally gives himself the permission to call and book himself and book a massage therapy for himself.
That's awesome,
Or
Dorit.
he can go and, like, the other day he was just napping on our swing in the backyard, because he understands that rest is encoded in all of us, and it's not a luxury. It's something we actually need to be more productive. And then vulnerability and all of this stuff. It's so true. And so beyond playing the game of currency that we have right now in the world, I think part of this reclamation and the responsibility that we women have to own up to is that men need us.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, they do. It's so
We're
good.
so far out of balance that it hurts all of us. Right.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't have any anger towards the men, because they're getting hurt as much as we are.
Yeah. And it's like, I think the Dalai Lama said that the world will be healed by a woman from the West. It's so true.
Correct.
So true.
Let's do it
so much. Let's do it. Scared shitless, but doing it anyway. I love that. Okay. So are you ready for the second part of the interview?
Hit me.
Okay. So this is just a set of questions that I need, you're going to answer really quickly without thinking too much.
Oh, I'm excited.
Okay. So my first question for you is this. In one word, what is feminine power for you?
Beauty.
Second question. How do you take care of yourself, your soul, your body? What are some of your non-negotiables?
Hot lemon water in the morning, 4 tough workouts a week, 1 massage a month, and time alone with my husband.
Love that. Third question. What advice does your now mom self would have given to your pre-mom self?
Oh, boy. Oh, that's tough. I would say keep dancing on top of bars. Have fun.
Oh, that's so fun. I love that.
It was a good 20s.
Okay. Fourth question. What makes you feel confident?
Really great genes.
Okay. What energizes you?
Conversations like this.
What makes you feel sexy?
Almost everything. I actually figured out a tech problem yesterday and then jumped on my husband. He's like, what the hell? I'm like, I don't know, just go with it.
That's amazing. What's powerful to you about being a woman?
Our ability to trust our intuition.
Yes. How do you create flow in your home? What are some of your hacks?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know that there is flow in my home. There's just sort of random life happening. And maybe that's our flow, is I just let things happen. The kitchen is dirty sometimes. Sometimes there's 4 separate dinners that get made instead of just one. I think I just let each one of us have our own rhythm. And I think that's how I allow us to have flow.
Oh, that's good. Okay. The last question for you, Sarah. In one sentence, what is your vision for your life? What are you creating? What's your life's purpose?
Oh my goodness, to be able to drop food instead of bombs. I mean, literally that is one of them, is I want the power of our hearts and our wisdom to be running the world, and any part I can play in that, I will. My next goal is $10 million in the business. And what I want to do is, when we hit that goal, I want to turn to my monthly community and ask them where we should donate it.
Oh, so good. I'm so
excited,
thrilled and honored to be a part of this community. I love this so much. And definitely you have my back on that.
Awesome.
Sarah, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your wisdom, for your insight, for your coaching, for your guidance, for your mentorship. Sister, I'm so in awe of you. Thank you for sharing your story.
Yes, thank you so much. Oh my God. Thank you so much for having me on, Dorit. It just meant so much. I always love conversations with you. We always have so much fun.
Yes. So before I let you go, can you talk about your exclusive control worksheet? What is it? how can people benefit from it and where they can find it. And then also share how people can connect with you online, your website, your social media. Now it's time for that.
Oh, you're so sweet. Well, listen, what I have for you guys that I think is really important is all throughout 2020, I think the most important lesson we've learned is that we can't control everything. And I know if there's some people like your eyes just started to twitch, I know. But I think what 2020 did is strip away this illusion of control, right? People are upset because they can't make plans. They can't figure out what their next goals are. And so what I did is I plucked a piece of homework out of my one-on-one coaching program. And I have made it free to everyone. And I call it the control worksheet. And what it does is it walks you through 3 major areas of control and how you feel in control and how you can start to control how you feel in control, which sounds funny, but it's true. So you can grab that worksheet over on my website. If you just go to sarahwalton.com, it's right there on the homepage. You can grab it there. And what I love about it is it comes with an accompanying video. So I'll walk you through the worksheet and sort of help you understand how to use it and when to use it, so that as we go through the rest of whatever the heck is next, right? Because we don't know, you will have these kind of levers you can pull to help yourself feel more in control. And as women right now, because we need your voices so much more than we ever have, I want you to feel in control. So that's why I made this open to the public, so you guys can go grab that. As far as staying in touch with me, I think you guys know Dorit's been a guest on my podcast, the Game On Girlfriend podcast. You can grab that iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon if you'd like there. And then you can reach me on Instagram or Facebook. It's at the Sarah Walton.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's been so much fun. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
I'm so blessed to have somebody. I keep telling this to my husband. I'm like, I need Sarah. Don't ask me questions. I just need her by my side. I just need her by my side. I can't do this. I can't do this by myself, on my own. And you know what? I'm here. Yes. And it took me such a long time to be okay with the fact that, we need help and I need help and we, and I need the support of women. Unfortunately, the support that I didn't have, I didn't grow up with this support, but it's okay to, go out there and ask for help and support. So thank you.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you, Dorit. It's been such a pleasure to be on your podcast today.
Welcome to the Confident, Energized, and Sexy Mama Show. I am Dorit Palvanov, your host, wife, mom to 3 daughters, and a femininity coach. My mission with this podcast is to inspire and educate you about your power as a woman, wife, and mother in the 21st century through thought-provoking solo episodes and interviews. I believe that the health of the world begins at home. And as women, we have massive power in this domain. I'm also the creator and facilitator of the groundbreaking community-based membership called Circle, which is a collective of females, women, daughters, wives, and mothers who are ready to ditch the baton of guilt, shame, and sacrifice and instead embody confidence, energy, and passion. You deserve to feel good. You actually can have it all. This is God's plan for you. So mama, straighten your shoulders, sway those hips, and get to own your feminine power like never before. Let's do this.